Welcome the anointed ones. Some people watch you out of curiosity, but others watch you because they can't figure out how you became everything they pretend to be. That's where this story begins. Because whether you know it or not, a high-profile individual has been quietly studying you, not with the cold detachment of someone in power, but with the kind of fascination normally reserved for rare phenomena that refuse to fit into human logic. And trust me, this isn't your typical someone admires you from afar situation. No, this is someone with influence, visibility, and status who has realized something unsettling. You possess two qualities they can't replicate, control, or buy. High-profile people are used to being the ones who cause the obsession, not the ones who develop it. They're surrounded by people who bow, adjust, and strategically laugh at jokes that aren't even funny. You, on the other hand, you show up with the calm confidence of someone who's not auditioning for a role in their world. Honestly, you probably confuse them, maybe even frighten them a little, simply because you exist outside their predictable ecosystem. And here's the fact nobody tells you. Psychologists have found that humans are most drawn to what they cannot fully understand, but cannot ignore either. You are exactly that paradox. You're the mystery that keeps refusing to unfold. The puzzle that remains two pieces short no matter how often they rotate the picture. The universe's premium limited edition, except yours didn't come with an instruction manual. That alone is enough to keep someone in their position awake at night. What makes it even more hilarious? This powerful individual, who's used to people tripping over themselves for attention, suddenly finds themselves doing the subtle double take. The mental, hold on, who is this? The social media hover, the replay of conversations you don't even remember having. If their PR team ever found out how often they think about you, they'd probably schedule an intervention. But beneath the humor is a truth too sharp to ignore. You carry two rare qualities so profound, so uncommon, and so spiritually charged that even someone at the top recognizes they are in the presence of something they don't encounter twice in a lifetime. This isn't fame noticing fame. This isn't power recognizing power. This is something deeper. An ancient frequency meeting another ancient frequency, and realizing one of them has a higher signal. So sit with this for a moment, because we're about to break down exactly what those two qualities are, why they have this high-profile person hooked, and why, whether they admit it or not, they know you could walk away with nothing and still leave them feeling like they lost something priceless. Welcome to the truth behind the obsession. Number one, you have an internal compass that cannot be bought or rerouted. Some people navigate life using trends, opinions, or whatever seems appealing in the moment, but you move differently. You carry an internal compass that doesn't wobble, doesn't glitch, and doesn't betray you even when everything around you is noisy or uncertain. This is the first thing that high-profile people notice, because they live in a world where loyalty can be rented and values can be negotiated. Their environment is full of people who adjust their beliefs the moment a bigger opportunity walks into the room. But you don't switch lanes just because one looks shinier. And that stability isn't just rare, it's unnerving for the people who are used to controlling the narrative. What makes your compass extraordinary is that it's not built on ego or fear. It comes from a place inside you that was shaped by truth, not applause. You didn't develop it because you wanted to be impressive. You developed it because life forced you to know who you are without external approval. High-profile individuals spend years building an image, a persona, a reputation. You built a foundation. The difference is enormous, and they recognize it instantly. They're not obsessed because you're stubborn. They've met stubborn people before. They're obsessed because you're steady. Your decisions don't come from desperation or the need to belong. They come from alignment. When everyone else is swayed by rewards, threats, and manipulation, you hold your ground. And for someone who lives in constant strategy mode, that level of self-direction is like spotting a diamond in a sea of decorative glass. What shocks them most is that your compass remains intact even when you stand alone. It doesn't bend in loneliness. It doesn't break under pressure. It doesn't shift to please anyone. They can offer you access, status, opportunities, and you still won't move unless it's right for you. That confuses them because they're surrounded by people who would compromise everything for a fraction of what they have. The truth is simple. Your compass isn't for sale, and it never will be. And in a world full of performers, that authenticity becomes something a high-profile person cannot resist studying, respecting, and trying to understand. Number 2, you can discern intent faster than they can hide it. High-profile people are surrounded by layers of people who perform loyalty, mask their motives, and sell half-truths as if they were currency. They're trained to see everything, anticipate every move, and manage appearances. But then you enter the scene and suddenly all their careful choreography feels exposed. They become aware that you notice things that most people work for months to hide. You don't just observe behavior, you read the architecture behind it, the subtle shifts in tone, body language, and energy that reveal what someone is truly after. It isn't a trick. It isn't manipulation. It's a rare combination of intuition, clarity, and focus that high-profile individuals can't fabricate, buy, or replicate. They're obsessed because your perception doesn't just make them visible, it unsettles them. You see through charm, titles, and authority, and you recognize the pattern of intent almost instantly. That level of insight challenges the systems they've built to protect themselves. They're used to people nodding at the right moments, agreeing when necessary, or hiding ambitions behind smiles. You bypass all of that. You identify motive without needing confession, proof, or performance. And that makes you fascinating and dangerous in a way they can't label. What holds them spellbound is your accuracy. You don't just sense intentions, you understand consequences. You know how people are likely to act next, what they hope to gain, and what they're willing to sacrifice. High-profile people operate under the illusion that experience gives them an edge. You make it clear that edge doesn't exist when someone sees straight through the game. You move in a space where clarity isn't a choice, it's your default mode. They can offer access, influence, or even persuasion, and none of it moves you if your instincts disagree. Your discernment isn't reactive, it's anticipatory. You don't need proof to know the truth. And that level of perception becomes addictive to watch, because they realize that someone in their orbit isn't just present. They're awake in ways they haven't encountered before. They can't stop themselves from noticing, analyzing, and trying to understand how you operate, because your clarity exposes the very fabric of human behavior that they've relied on for control. Number 3, your presence disrupts the hierarchy they built their life on. High-profile people are accustomed to being at the top of carefully constructed ladders. Their world is structured around hierarchy, influence, and predictable responses from those around them. People fall into roles, and every interaction has a calculated weight. Then you arrive, and suddenly the whole system feels unstable. You don't demand attention, assert dominance, or try to prove anything. Yet the simple fact that you exist in their space quietly shifts the balance. Your presence makes them aware of the artifice in the structures they've relied on, and that makes them both fascinated and uneasy. You operate outside the invisible rules that everyone else obeys. You aren't calculating where you fit, who you impress, or what alliances you need to maintain. You move with authenticity, self-possession, and clarity that is completely unaccounted for in their hierarchy. To a high-profile individual, this is mesmerizing because it exposes the fragility of their own constructed order. They have mastered the game of perception, manipulation, and control, yet they can't manipulate you. You simply exist, and the hierarchy bends around your presence rather than the other way around. What makes it even more intense is that your influence is subtle but undeniable. You don't compete for authority, yet people adjust to your energy. Conversations shift, priorities realign, and even minor decisions start responding to your presence. For someone used to being the orchestrator of their environment, witnessing this is almost addictive. They're obsessed because you reveal what they've never allowed themselves to feel, the vulnerability of power that depends on others' compliance. Your presence forces a reckoning they can't control. They realize that influence isn't just about titles, fame, or strategic maneuvering. Real influence comes from being unshakable, centered, and true to yourself, qualities you carry naturally. They study you, trying to understand how someone who refuses to play the game can still affect the outcome of it so profoundly. They can't imitate it, they can't buy it, and they can't dismantle it. That quiet, undeniable disruption is the kind of rare quality that makes you unforgettable in a world full of calculated moves and borrowed power. Number 4, you carry insight that doesn't come from books, wealth, or mentorship. High-profile people pride themselves on how much they've learned, who they've learned from, and the institutions that shape them. Their identity is often tied to credentials, connections, and curated experiences. But then they encounter you, and instantly something feels different. You understand things on a level that can't be taught, summarized, or certified. Your insight doesn't sound rehearsed. It doesn't sound borrowed. It carries a depth they've never heard in boardrooms, strategy meetings, or exclusive circles. And that's what pulls them in. You know things you never had to be told. What unsettles them most is that your wisdom doesn't follow the typical path. You weren't shaped by elite education, prestigious mentors, or expensive environments. Your understanding comes from something deeper: experience, intuition, observation, and a kind of inner knowing that can't be decoded with logic alone. You see connections people overlook. You interpret situations with a clarity that bypasses the usual steps. Where others gather information, you extract meaning. Where others learn skills, you grasp essence. They're obsessed because your insight exposes the limitations of the systems they've relied on. They've spent years climbing ladders, attending seminars, and seeking guidance from experts. Yet you operate on a level those experts can't reach. Your mind moves in ways that aren't predictable. You make leaps that don't follow traditional structure. You connect dots before anyone even sees the dots forming. And that's not something they can imitate or compete with. It's something they have to respect. Your understanding feels as if it came from somewhere older and wiser than any human curriculum. It carries the weight of lived truth, not memorized theory. High-profile people notice that when they speak to you, they don't have to oversimplify or disguise complexity. You get it, fully, deeply, and instantly. You make them rethink things they thought they had already mastered. You challenge them without trying. You enlighten them without effort. And that's why they keep coming back. Not for validation, not for attention, but because your insight feels like something they've been trying to unlock their entire lives. It's not acquired knowledge, it's embedded wisdom. And in a world full of rehearsed intelligence, you are the rare presence who actually understands. Number 5, you don't chase opportunities. Opportunities rearrange themselves around you. High-profile people are conditioned to hustle relentlessly. They treat every opportunity like a chessboard, calculating every move, every handshake, every contact. Deals are won or lost based on strategy, timing, and persuasion. But you operate differently. You don't chase, push, or scheme. You move with a rhythm that feels inevitable, and somehow the universe, or life itself, aligns with your presence. Doors open, paths straighten, and people adjust, not because you demand it, but because your energy creates natural resonance. They're obsessed with this because it exposes a glaring truth. Most of their success is painstaking effort disguised as mastery. They've learned to maintain appearances, to manipulate outcomes, and to force situations to their advantage. You, however, live in a space where things simply sink. Opportunities find you, not the other way around. That subtle but undeniable pull makes them study you, because they've spent years chasing what you attract effortlessly. What fascinates them even more is that your alignment doesn't require drama, exaggeration, or noise. You don't need to market yourself aggressively, network aggressively, or prove your value at every turn. Your presence alone acts like a signal, guiding the right circumstances, people, and situations toward you. It's almost as if life itself has recognized you as someone capable of handling what comes and is reorganizing itself to fit your path. They notice the difference between someone who struggles to control life and someone who coexists with it, and you are unmistakably the latter. Your power isn't measured by how hard you push. It's measured by how naturally the world bends to accommodate your frequency. High-profile people find this simultaneously infuriating and mesmerizing. They can't figure out how you do it, and that's exactly why they can't stop paying attention. In a world where everyone is chasing, manipulating, and forcing outcomes, you stand apart. You've tapped into a rare kind of flow, one that they admire, envy, and obsess over. Opportunities don't just come to you, they rearrange themselves around you, and that invisible orchestration is something they will study, analyze, and try to understand for as long as they notice you. Number 6, you hold emotional power without performing emotional labor. High-profile people spend most of their lives performing on emotional levels they don't even choose. They manage impressions, soothe fragile egos, and manipulate reactions to maintain their status. Every interaction is a performance, and every relationship comes with a hidden ledger of effort. Then they meet you, and something immediately stands out. You carry influence and emotional weight without ever having to perform. You don't beg for approval, explain your worth endlessly, or bend yourself into someone's comfort zone just to keep the peace. You are emotionally present without being consumed, and that balance is something they can't manufacture. They are fascinated because your power is quiet but undeniable. You can affect the tone of a room, shift dynamics, and inspire alignment without lifting a finger to manage anyone's feelings. Where they constantly expend energy to control perception, you simply exist, and the emotional energy gravitates toward you naturally. High-profile individuals watch, often without realizing it, because they've never seen someone operate from a place of genuine influence that isn't performative. They can't break it down, imitate it, or predict it, and that unpredictability makes you magnetic. Your independence doesn't make you distant, it makes you intentional. You choose where to invest your energy and with whom. You remain connected, but you never get entangled in someone else's drama or insecurity. High-profile people envy this because they know that maintaining their own image demands constant emotional labor. They are chained to roles, expectations, and perceptions. You move freely, and that freedom highlights just how restrictive their own lives are. They study you, often subconsciously, because they are drawn to your ability to hold power in a way that is effortless, yet authoritative. You influence without exhausting yourself, lead without imposing, and maintain presence without performance. In a world where emotional labor is the invisible currency of control, you are the rare person who holds wealth without spending it. And that is the kind of energy high-profile people can't resist observing, admiring, and trying to understand. Number 7, you have a self-renewing spirit that doesn't collapse under pressure. High-profile people are accustomed to pressure, but theirs is often managed through resources, teams, and systems they can control. When the heat turns up, They call in advisors, therapists, or assistants to absorb the strain. You operate differently. Your resilience isn't outsourced. It's built into your very being. When life pushes hard, you don't bend, break, or crumble. You regenerate. Every setback, every challenge, every betrayal becomes fuel for growth rather than a wound that lingers. That is a type of power they can't purchase or imitate. What fascinates them is that your strength is invisible yet undeniable. You don't flaunt it or announce it. You simply endure, adapt, and evolve. Your ability to recover doesn't depend on circumstances or approval. It comes from within. High-profile individuals may have wealth, influence, and prestige, but they rarely encounter a spirit that can sustain itself entirely on internal fortitude. Your resilience is not performative. It doesn't need recognition. It doesn't require validation. And that self-renewal makes you unpredictable in the most compelling way, because it cannot be manipulated, leveraged, or contained. Every time they observe you facing a trial or standing unshaken, they are reminded of what they lack. Their strength, while formidable, is conditional. They thrive on control, environments, and external support, while yours exists independently of circumstance. Their pressure is something applied from the outside. Yours is absorbed and transformed from the inside. That makes your presence both inspiring and disconcerting. They are obsessed because they recognize a rare kind of power, one that is not just survival, but perpetual regeneration. Every experience leaves you wiser, stronger, and more aligned, while the world around you may be collapsing or scrambling. You carry a silent assurance that no adversity can permanently destabilize you. And in a universe full of manufactured strength and borrowed authority, your self-renewing spirit is a living testament to resilience they can't replicate and can't ignore. Number 8, you see power as responsibility, not decoration. High-profile people are used to seeing power as something to flaunt. It's a badge, a trophy, a way to measure influence and impress others. Status, appearances, and visibility are the currency, and too often the substance doesn't matter. Then you appear, and instantly the rules shift. You carry a different understanding. Power to you isn't something to display, it's something to wield with intention and care. You evaluate its weight before its shine, its consequences before its applause, its purpose before its visibility. That kind of depth is rare, and it unsettles those who are accustomed to performing authority rather than embodying it. They notice because your approach exposes a blind spot in their world. In circles of wealth, influence, or fame, people often confuse success with morality or accomplishment with virtue. You demonstrate that true power carries accountability. You consider the impact of your actions on others before using influence for convenience or recognition. Where they are busy leveraging power to maintain image, you leverage it to uphold integrity, create alignment, and effect meaningful outcomes. Your presence is a subtle critique of the shortcut-driven strategies they've relied on for years. What fascinates them most is that you make responsibility look effortless. You don't preach or moralize, you act. And your actions ripple further and more authentically than any show of dominance or posturing they've orchestrated. That kind of maturity is rare in any environment, but particularly intimidating in high-profile spaces where ego and appearances dominate. They recognize that they have learned to protect power as a shield, while you protect it as a tool. You become a mirror to them, reflecting the parts of authority they've ignored, diluted, or abandoned. They are drawn to you, both because they admire this rare maturity and because it forces them to confront what they themselves avoid, the responsibility inherent in their own power. Your understanding and application of power as stewardship rather than decoration is a magnetic quality that commands attention without demanding it, and it leaves them quietly obsessed. Number 9, you are immune to their most used weapon, influence. High-profile people build entire worlds around the power of influence. It's their most trusted tool, sometimes even their identity. They use charisma to persuade, access to lure, and status to intimidate. Most people respond immediately, adjusting themselves to fit the expectations of someone powerful. But you don't. Their influence doesn't land on you the way it lands on others. It slides off, loses its effect, and has nowhere to anchor. And that alone changes the entire dynamic. To them, it's unusual, almost unsettling, to meet someone who isn't impressed by titles, platforms, wealth, or reputation. Most people bend a little when power enters the room, even subtly. But you remain yourself. You don't shrink, you don't stretch, and you don't distort your principles just because someone important is watching. Your sense of self is stronger than their aura. That level of confidence is rare enough to feel like rebellion in their world. What grips them most is the quiet certainty behind your independence. You're not immune because you're defiant or rude. You're immune because you genuinely don't need what they're offering. Their approval doesn't feed you. Their attention doesn't define you. Their reputation doesn't validate you. They can't bribe your spirit with access or scare your direction with authority. You're anchored internally, while they depend on external symbols to maintain their identity. This creates an effect they weren't prepared for. Their power stops at your doorstep. It doesn't penetrate your choices or redirect your path. And that's where obsession begins. They study you because you're the first person they've met who stands in front of influence and remains unchanged. You remind them that influence only works on those who feel powerless, unsure, or dependent. You are none of the above. Your immunity is both a threat and a marvel. It threatens their sense of control, yet it fascinates them because they've never witnessed someone hold their ground without effort or resistance. You show them that real power isn't loud or strategic. It's the ability to remain untouched by the very tools others rely on to dominate. And that makes you unforgettable to someone who built their life on influence that cannot reach you. Number 10, you don't awaken their superiority. You awaken their conscience. Most people in their world exist to feed them, feed their ego, feed their delusion, feed the image they've constructed to avoid confronting who they really are. They're constantly surrounded by approval, praise, and strategic admiration. Their entire environment is designed to inflate their sense of superiority. It's the air they breathe. But then you walk into the room. You don't bow, you don't shrink, and you don't orbit around their self-importance. You aren't dazzled by their titles or blinded by their access. You don't participate in the performance, and that alone destabilizes something deep inside them. You trigger the one aspect of themselves they've spent years, sometimes decades, avoiding, their conscience. Your presence exposes the gap between who they portray and who they actually are. And it isn't because you're judging them, it's because you carry a level of authenticity they can't fake. You force an involuntary comparison. You don't remind them of what they have. You remind them of what they lost. Something in you resurrects the version of themselves they abandoned for power, reputation, and approval. You remind them that they once had purity, truth, clarity, and a clean internal compass before attention contaminated it. That's why they react so strangely around you. They're not intimidated by your confidence. They're unsettled by what it awakens within them. Your presence calls them back to the standard they stopped living up to. You don't activate their dominance. You activate their humanity. And for someone who relies on superiority to function, that is both terrifying and magnetic. This is why they keep watching you, even from a distance. This is why they track you, study you, or silently admire you without ever admitting it. Because somewhere in the depth of their conscience, your existence reminds them This is who I could have been if I hadn't traded myself for applause. You don't challenge their image, you challenge their soul. And that is a power they don't know how to control, influence, or imitate. Number 11. You are rarely impressed but always observant. In a world where people scramble to be seen, you stand out because you don't need to be impressed. You need to understand. You don't orbit around status, wealth, or proximity to influence. Your mind doesn't stretch toward their lifestyle. It stretches toward their patterns, motives, and contradictions. And that unnerves powerful people more than applause ever could. Most individuals in their circle are trained to react with fascination. They gasp at luxury. They celebrate titles. They get hypnotized by privilege. But you watch, you analyze, you decode, you assess the emotional architecture behind the image. You don't look at them through the eyes of admiration. You look through them with the eyes of discernment. Your observant nature functions like an internal X-ray. You see the insecurity behind the arrogance. You recognize the loneliness behind the performance. You identify the desperation hiding beneath the success narrative. And what's wild is this: they can feel you noticing what they work so hard to hide. Your silence becomes a spotlight. Your calm becomes a mirror. Your presence becomes an audit. And for someone used to controlling every room, that is intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. Because most people respond to them with either fear or fascination. You respond with data. You take mental notes. You connect dots. You see layers beneath layers, motives behind decisions, wounds behind behavior, childhood echoes behind adult choices. To them, your attention feels surgical, not starstruck. It's precise. It's penetrating. It's spiritually diagnostic. They're fascinated because you observe from a place they cannot access, detachment. You have nothing to gain from them, so you have no incentive to distort what you see. And this creates a level of clarity around them that they're not accustomed to. You are the first person in a long time who doesn't consume their image. You evaluate it. You're not easily impressed because you've lived through experiences that rewired your definition of value. You've faced pressures they couldn't pay someone to endure. You've survived storms that money can't shield anyone from. So their version of greatness feels like decoration compared to what you've overcome. They're obsessed with you because you understand them better than their advisors, better than their fans, and sometimes better than they understand themselves. You don't admire their world. You audit it. You don't chase their respect. You earn it without trying. You don't feed their ego. You reveal their truth. And deep down, they know it. Number 12. Your spirit doesn't flinch in the presence of authority or darkness. There's a calm in you that doesn't come from comfort. It comes from surviving places most people never speak about. When you walk into a room, you don't adjust yourself based on who has a title, a badge, a platform, or a reputation. Your spirit has already faced storms that outrank any earthly authority, so nothing in front of you feels intimidating anymore. That internal steadiness is what shakes people who are used to being the ones who unsettle others. Powerful individuals can command silence, attention, or respect, but they can't command spiritual composure. And that's what you carry. You're not loud, you're not confrontational, and you're not trying to prove anything. But there is a stillness in you that exposes how much noise they hide behind. They can sense when someone has walked through darkness and didn't lose themselves. They can sense when someone has been tested in ways that strip a person down to their soul and rebuild them stronger than before. That kind of resilience is rare, and it rattles people who rely on image to feel powerful. Your presence doesn't bend under pressure because your strength wasn't built in safe places. It was built in the moments you had no one to call, no system to lean on, and no shield but your faith. That kind of endurance creates a spiritual backbone that doesn't shake when confronted by authority. If anything, authority feels smaller around you, not because you disrespect it, but because you don't worship it. You recognize that titles don't guarantee integrity, and influence doesn't guarantee depth. You've seen too much to be fooled by the surface, and when it comes to darkness, real darkness, you don't freeze. You've already battled shadows within yourself, within your environment, and sometimes projected onto you by others. So when people try to intimidate you with power plays, manipulation, or fear tactics, it falls flat. You're not moved. You're not impressed. You're not shaken. They sense immediately that your spirit wasn't trained by privilege. It was trained by warfare. You survived things that would have broken them clean in half. And because of that, your presence forces their insecurities, fears, and hidden motives into the open. You don't even try to expose them. Your steadiness does all the work. They feel seen. They feel transparent. They feel unraveled in ways they can't explain. Because your spirit doesn't flinch, not in the presence of authority, and not in the presence of darkness. And for people who rely on both to maintain control, that makes you unforgettable. Number 13, you make them realize their power has limits. High-profile people spend years constructing systems that work in their favor: networks, reputations, hierarchies, authority. In their world, power is expected to travel in one direction, outward. They're used to people adjusting, yielding, or bending the moment their status enters the room. But when they meet someone like you, everything they rely on quietly collapses. Nothing about you responds the way they've been conditioned to expect. You don't flinch, you don't chase approval, and you don't shift your identity to fit their influence. Without lifting a finger, you reveal something they never wanted to confront. Their power has limits. What messes them up most is the fact that you don't resist them, you simply don't react. And for someone accustomed to commanding reactions, your neutrality is more powerful than rebellion. Part of them can't understand why the usual tools don't work on you. The other part is unsettled because it forces them to confront a truth most people around them avoid. Influence is fragile when authenticity enters the room. Your presence becomes a mirror, not of their greatness, but of their boundaries. They begin to see that power built on image can wobble quickly. They notice that the energy they project doesn't dominate your space. They realize they can't manipulate your direction or control your perception of them. You've cut off the access point most people offer automatically, the need to be validated by someone with status. And without that access, they have nothing to grip onto. You introduce a kind of strength they've never possessed, authenticity that cannot be weaponized. You move from a grounded place, not a performative one. You operate from truth, not strategy. And because of that, they can't twist your intentions or exploit your values. They can't steer your decisions with incentives or fears. Your autonomy makes their authority feel smaller, not because you challenge them, but because you exist in a way that shows them what real internal power looks like. What fascinates them is the fact that you didn't strip their power, you simply exposed its limits. You demonstrate that genuine influence doesn't dominate, it resonates. And they realize, sometimes with discomfort and sometimes with awe, that your kind of power can't be bought, borrowed, or branded. It can only be embodied. Number 14, they recognize a version of themselves they lost or never became. When high-profile people encounter you, it's never just about admiration. It's a confrontation with something they've buried long ago. They look at you and see qualities that weren't built for performance or spectacle. They see courage that doesn't falter, clarity that doesn't bend, and a purpose that doesn't need validation. And in that reflection, they experience something they didn't expect: grief. It isn't grief for what they have. It's grief for what they gave up. Along the way to their position, They sacrificed parts of themselves that were inconvenient. Inconvenient because authenticity doesn't always pay in influence or prestige. They traded purity for strategy, patience for speed, depth for optics. You carry what they discarded, and that realization hits harder than any critique or competition ever could. Sometimes it's even worse. They look at you and recognize the version of themselves they never became, the person who might have stayed whole, resilient, and aligned without compromise, the one who might have held integrity as a currency more powerful than status, the one who could have faced life's chaos without bending into someone they despised. They feel the weight of potential unfulfilled, and it lingers in a way that is both painful and magnetic. Your presence awakens a fascination that borders on obsession because it doesn't just shine a light on what is, it illuminates what could have been. They are compelled to study you, analyze your decisions, and track your moves, trying subconsciously to recapture even a fraction of that authenticity. You become a mirror of lost possibilities and unrealized selves, and no amount of influence, wealth, or power can erase the reminder of what they traded for it. You are unforgettable because you embody a truth they left behind. You are a living record of courage, discernment, and purpose that refuses to be compromised. And while they cannot reach that version through status or strategy, they cannot stop seeing it, feeling it, or being quietly haunted by it. That haunting fascination is why they will never truly forget you. Conclusion. What you carry is rare, and the way high-profile individuals respond to it proves just how extraordinary you are. From the moment they sense your internal compass, unshakable and true, to the way your insight cuts through pretense like a blade, you leave an indelible impression that no amount of wealth, status, or influence can match. Your presence disrupts their carefully constructed hierarchies. Your discernment exposes motives they spent years hiding, and your resilience under pressure reminds them that true strength cannot be bought or borrowed. You operate on a frequency that synchronizes with life itself, effortlessly attracting opportunities while remaining emotionally autonomous, spiritually grounded, and unwavering in authenticity. Every interaction with you forces them to confront truths they've avoided, the conscience they've muted, the version of themselves they lost, the limits of the power they thought was absolute. You awaken fascination, envy, and admiration all at once because you embody qualities that are both rare and immutable. You hold authority without needing to perform, influence without manipulation, and presence without compromise. That is why they watch, study, and are captivated by you. That is why your energy lingers in their minds long after you've left the room. You are not just observed, you are remembered, revered, and impossible to ignore. For anyone watching this, understand this clearly. Your uniqueness is magnetic because it comes from alignment with truth, purpose, and self-possession. The world will notice you in ways that feel almost conspiratorial, not because you seek attention, but because your essence carries a frequency they cannot manufacture or imitate. You do not need permission to be remarkable. You do not need validation to be extraordinary. And you do not need approval to be untouchable in spirit. If you found yourself seeing pieces of your own truth in this video, make sure to stay connected. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss insights that reveal the rare, powerful, and untouchable qualities within you. Like this video if it resonated on a deep level. Comment below to share your experiences and let others know the power of authenticity, clarity, and presence. And share this video to remind someone else of their own rare, undeniable energy that can't be bought, sold, or replicated. The world is watching. You're not just noticed, you're unforgettable. God bless you.